welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 436. Thank you for joining us. We have a very PlayStation-centric show in store for you today. We're going to talk about the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo that is out now, a Last of Us television show, and we're going to look back on 20 years of PlayStation 2. So look forward to that. Very excited to talk about that. But before we get into anything PlayStation, I have to know, did any of you guys head out to the store this week to stock up on toilet paper like you're going on an all-Chipotle diet?
There was no toilet paper. There was none.
Really?
Well, we went to Staples because nobody thinks to raid Staples for stuff. So
Right.
there was plenty of toilet paper in Staples, but a supermarket was completely sold out at the beginning of the week.
And people should go out and they should go out and do this because, after all, they've heard that you should do it. So someone read somewhere that you should do it, so everyone went out and did it. It's a really good sign of how fucked we are.
You don't need that much toilet roll, and it doesn't make you shit yourself. So why?
That's the thing is, don't get me wrong, I'm not laughing at people.
Oh yeah, no, that's not what I'm suggesting. That you're laughing.
Because it's not funny. It's not funny. It's just terrible. There's these videos that obviously everyone's seen them of these small coastal towns here in Britain, and these queues of people with trolleys and trolleys full of 20 packs of toilet roll. And I think a lot of them probably went in there not even intending to do it, but they just saw other people with trolleys full of toilet roll and were like, I better do the same thing.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I think it's a real fucking indictment of human behavior. And that's only a slightly less controversial take than our take last week on Batman Returns. So it'll be fine.
The craze hasn't hit my area yet, but I just decided to go get some extra soap and extra toilet paper just in case it does, because herd mentality is going to be the death of us all, or at least the death of me having enough toilet paper.
I put out a tweet last week where I said, in 1990, I was like, me in 1990, 2020, it'll be like laser guns and flying cars and all this shit we're seeing on Galaxy High. That'll be in real life. And then 2020 is actually, here's a video on how to wash your hands.
My favorite was that clip of, I don't know who she was, but she seemed very important. She was in front of a microphone or whatever, telling people not to touch their face and whatnot. And as she was saying this, she did that thing where she puts her finger on her tongue to turn the page on the piece of paper she was reading, and oh my god.
I think she's with the CDC, so that it's even more of a what are you doing right there?
Yeah,
that is president staring at the sun during an eclipse type of move. Let's be honest.
And I need to make it clear, it's not that I don't think the coronavirus isn't dangerous. It's not that I don't think it's a legitimate issue or anything like that. I don't think it's fake news or anything like that. I think but I think the reaction of governments and the reaction of people and the reaction of humans and this kind of tribal mentality about what we should and shouldn't do and the misinformation and the spreading of misinformation is just a really, really good fucking sign of how we're actually fucked if anything truly Armageddon-esque happens, because our governments aren't handling it well, the people aren't handling it well, and the information that's out there is being muddled and screwed up and delivered incorrectly. And so it's if anything really fucking kicked off globally, we're done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
I went to two meetings for my real job this week, and at both of them they had representatives from the local hospitals and Red Cross talking about the response to the coronavirus in our area. And my area is it's remote. There is a popular ski town about an hour north of me, so we do get visitors in, so it's eventually going to come here. But then at the meeting, one of the guys said that we have our first test for someone with coronavirus happening in the county. And I'm just like, okay, well, I let my coworkers know. And then I go to the meeting the next day and they're like, oh yeah. So what that was a guy was found dead in his camper with foam around his mouth. We don't think it is coronavirus, but we're just testing him anyway. And I'm just thinking, where was that information yesterday before I went and told my coworkers? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Hey, but you know what else is bad?
Hmm.
Batman Forever.
Not as bad as Batman and Robin. Oh, Batman and Robin.
You got a problem with bat credit cards?
I have a problem with Alicia Silverstone's uncle Alfred making a bat suit that has her exact cup size. That's what bothers me.
You think Bruce Wayne pays taxes?
No.
Probably no way. No, he's an offshore motherfucker. Like, he knows so much about tech that he's already like fucking sorted that out. Nobody knows what's going on with his finances. You know, it's like, how much tax do you owe, Bruce? I don't know. Why don't you look on your computers and find out? Oh, it says here you owe none. That's right.
Wayne Enterprises is actually registered in a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. That is 100% true. And Bruce Wayne's going to vote for Joe Biden.
I always remember in Arkham Asylum, which you recently played, CJ.
Yep.
Wayne Tech supplies all of the locks and the technology in Arkham Asylum, and in that game as Batman, you go around breaking all that shit in order to get around Arkham Asylum. Now that's his own tech, and he's fucking breaking that on purpose because he knows after this whole palaver's like died down, they're gonna have to come back to him and buy a load more locks and cameras.
It's a racket.
There has never been a more capitalist superhero than Batman. But still, there used to be a grey tower alone on the sea. You became the. I'll stop now.
The best song from that album is the "You Hate Your Boss at Your Job." That's a great song.
I have no idea what you were talking about now.
This is the Batman Forever soundtrack. It's a dope-ass soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
You don't know the Seal song? I'd assume that infected the entire world.
Kiss on the Rose.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Everyone's mom was really into that song. Same with that Outkast song about making your daughter come that no one seemed to acknowledge.
Wait, are you talking about Miss Jackson?
Hey,
is that what that was about? I'm such a fucking square.
All I know is my mom was a big Outkast fan, and it was really interesting to sit in the car with her as we listened to lyrics such as "With your girl's dick all up in my mouth." So that was an interesting year.
It was weird how your mom pointed directly at you when that line came up, though.
Oh shit. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into the show. And for our opening story, I actually found this. This is recent. This is, I think, today. A news piece straight out of the UK, where firefighters had to rush to put out a 75 square meter hay fire near Bramham. I don't know where that is. Do you know where that is? Our British people?
Do you have a county attached to that?
Nope, just Bramham.
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 No.
Bramham. Bramham. I don't know.
Probably Bramham.
Bramham.
Probably.
So this fire happened at a farm that specializes in free-range pork. But how do they prove that their pork is actually free-range? Well, actually, at this farm, they equip each pig with a pedometer to show that it's getting in its steps every day. Unfortunately for the farm owners, the farmers, they learned that pigs will eat just about anything, including pedometers, and that's exactly what happened. One pig ate another pig's pedometer and passed it through its digestive tract. When it came out the other side, the partially digested pedometer sat there in the pig's poo until the copper in the device's battery reacted to all that shit around it, and the haze in the pig's bedding ignited. Firefighters were able to get to the scene and put it out pretty quickly, and no pigs were hurt in the incident, which is good because they're probably going to be turned into bacon next week. Sorry, Charlotte.
Well, I just looked this up, and it's not far away from where I'm from. It's in Yorkshire, so a lot of farming land there, so that's not a surprise. But people in Yorkshire really like pork crackling, so it's kind of a shame that there wasn't some good crackling made out of that incident.
I imagine if one of those pigs caught fire, it would have smelled delicious all over Brahman. See, this is what happens when I'm back on meat, is I just start thinking about the smell of meat and stuff. But I'm wondering, like, how far does that pedometer information go Like if you go to the store and get some pork chops, will there be a little note on it that says this pig walked 14,000 steps in its lifetime? That's actually really low. That'd be like a
But
day.
you see, like, this is what I don't get about meat eaters. Like, you're eating a dead animal. Why do you care? For me, it's a bit weird that you care what like, if an animal's happy before it's died, it still dies.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. And
The-
it's like the same with the whole horse meat scandal. I get a little bit why you'd be upset that you've eaten something that you weren't expecting to eat, but you're still eating a bloody animal. Why do you care so much?
Charlotte,
I
it's
don't
it's an interesting kind of moral quandary. I'll go to these like hoity-toity grocery stores and they'll be like, "This is a free-range, all vegan, or not all vegan, a free-range chicken breast thing," and it's like they still just cut its fucking head off. Like I don't care if it walked for a while, then they shot it in the face, or if it just lived in a shitty pen and they shot it in the face. It's still it's a weird thing. And I think it's a cultural thing. I think we want to feel better about the meat death.
Yeah.
I don't really care either way. I mean, it doesn't. Sure, are they happy? I don't know. They all end up dead. So
Yeah, I understand why people do it for taste reasons. Like if you're doing it for that reason, I understand. But when people try to be all high and mighty and like, oh, I only eat pigs that are from a farm down the road, I'm like, it's not any better. I don't know.
all end up in the same place. I will say that I grew up in a family. Well, I say a family of hunters. My brother hunted, and I went hunting a few times. Never shot anything because getting up at 3 a.m. To put on a bunch of clothes and go walk through the woods in the pitch black with a gun while getting yelled at by your brother is not a good way to be introduced to the sport of hunting. It's if the animal is scared or like let's say you shoot a deer and you don't kill it immediately or you don't kill it really quickly, they run, this adrenaline pumps through, and it kind of it fucks with the meat. It makes it really stringy, and like it's almost has like a sour flavor because all this adrenaline and then these chemicals are pumping through, and it ruins the flavor, so to speak. So there's and the idea of being humane, yeah, but there's also like, well, this ain't gonna taste good now. So I mean, you gotta that's something to consider. But yeah, it's a weird thing. I don't know. I don't try to think about it too much. It's just like, I like bacon. I'm gonna eat some bacon.
My dad hunted for 10 years, and the only deer he killed was with his car.
Oh, Jesus, nice.
But I'm kind of with you, Charlotte. I mean, I was off meat for a while. Now I'm back on it just because I couldn't diet and be vegetarian at the same time. It just wouldn't work for me. But the less I know about my meat, the better. I don't want to know that my chicken went to Poultry University or whatever these dumb crap they put on all these labels now to let you know that you're eating a smart chicken. And I'm telling it, this chicken solved a Rubik's Cube and it's delicious. Like, I don't need to know any of that.
Tell me when it graduated from Poultry University, it had the little graduation cap, and somebody came along and flipped the really tiny tassel over to the other side.
It's the same person who's gluing all those sombreros and MAGA hats to pigeons all over the country. They just put the little hat on it.
I know that's cruel to the pigeons, but god damn, that's funny.
All right, so that was our opening story. Let's go ahead and get talking about some other stuff, and we're going to start with Charlotte. You're watching Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yes.
Are you my 12-year-old nephew?
Well, I'm not watching the actual Yu-Gi-Oh series. I'm watching the Abridged series. So this is a thing I watched like 10 years ago. So when I was your 12-year-old nephew, kind of. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series is basically it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode squashed down into 5 minutes with a lot of funny voiceover. And it's really childish, but also very funny. Like they have like a character that speaks like Barney the dinosaur for no reason, and he's very stupid. They have a character who is called the Limey, and he's British, and he calls everybody wankers. There's like the women in there, like there's a lot of sex joking about how all the other characters treat them like sex objects, and it's a little bit but it's as long as you see it as like tongue in cheek, it's kind of funny, and it's just like really stupid humor, but I like it. I'm rewatching it, and it's making me laugh. It's like full of dumb jokes and pop culture references, but it's all on YouTube. And yeah, I think they stopped making it. Maybe, I mean, the first episodes were put up on YouTube right at the beginning of YouTube. It's pretty old, but it's still really childish but really funny. Would recommend. I think they've done other anime series where they've made them abridged, where people have just like squashed them down and then done their own stupid voiceover. So the reason I've been rewatching this though is because Yu-Gi-Oh is a big sort of meme in the speedrunning community. So people speedrun the Yu-Gi-Oh games, and the reason people speedrun the Yu-Gi-Oh games is largely because of the abridged series has kept people interested in it. So yeah, I would recommend watching it all on YouTube. I was going to talk about the Mighty Boosh because I've ordered the DVD box set, but that's not arrived yet. So I'll be watching that next week. And I've been playing Yakuza 3, so I've not really got much game-wise to talk about that's new. So yeah, just a shout out that Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series is dumb, but still very funny.
Charlotte, is this similar to how like a Team 4-Star did the Dragon Ball Z Abridged?
Possibly, yeah. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. But...
I guess, is it just a couple, like a group of people, like kind of cut it into their own stuff and like voice over it and make it silly?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool,
yeah.
cool, excellent.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
To interrupt, Team 4-Star were inspired by the Yu-Gi-Oh folks, so a lot of those guys have gone on to actually work in voiceover now. So
That's good. It's nice to know when something like that works out. How did you get started watching this? Was it because of the speedrunning?
Well, I just remembered it because it was full of memes when I was like 10 years ago. So when I was a teenager, I watched it, and I remembered about it because there was a Yu-Gi-Oh run at UKSG that I went to in January.
Gotcha.
So I think that he ran this guy called Dean. He ran. It wasn't Forbidden Memories because that's a bit of a meme in the speedrunning community, but it was a different one. It's a PlayStation 1 Yu-Gi-Oh game, and actually looks surprisingly fun. I might actually play a Yu-Gi-Oh game.
Well, I mean, they make a lot of them. Or
Yeah.
I think they do. They still do. I know they made a lot of them during the DS, 3DS era.
Yeah, I wasn't into Yu-Gi-Oh at all as a kid, so it's just this funny voiceover series is just funny for me for some reason. So, yeah.
I always thought of Yu-Gi-Oh as kind of the Kmart to Pokemon's Walmart.
I mean, it wasn't like Digimon Pokemon had more. I mean, which was better, Digimon or Pokemon?
in terms of like the card game, like Pokemon, hands down, the Digimon card game is like almost non-existent.
I think Digimon had better designs though, because that shit had like 6-winged angels and just like tarantula people and some really good like metal album cover monster art.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, stuff like Skull Greymon like look metal as F. So
I was more of a Dragon Quest Monsters fan, so they didn't have a card game.
yeah, I was always in the Magic boat. So when like stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh came around, it just never clicked with me. I always just stuck to Magic, and even then I fell off that pretty hard. So
I imagine Yu-Gi-Oh and by extension Pokemon would probably look pretty childish compared to Magic. I had a friend growing up that he was really into the Star Wars collectible card game, and like he would bring his binder to school every single day, and this fat fucking binder just had almost every single card, but nobody else played it, so he was just like collecting them for himself to maybe, I don't know, someday run into someone who did. I don't know if he ever found someone who did. I collected X-Men cards.
We all know that kid. I still have my X-Men cards, by the way.
I think mine are in a box at my parents' house. All right, let's go ahead and move on to Occams. Occams, what did you watch this week?
Well, I have a late entry for a game, just real quick. I started playing Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen again.
Nice.
It's so good. It's so stupidly fucking good. It is. If you haven't played it, it's on sale on the PlayStation Network right now, and it's like it's like a not Lord of the Rings, but goddamn, maybe a Dragon Age, but meets kind of a Dark Souls vibe. It's so good. It's the best magic system I've ever seen in a video game. I can't recommend it enough, but I didn't come to talk about that. Came to
just real
talk
quick,
about
it's also on Switch, and it's flawless on Switch. So
hey, that's
just want
awesome.
to throw that out there.
and PC.
Yeah, it's on PC too. It's also on last gen systems. But anyways, go on.
That's great. I forgot that was on Switch. Maybe we'll take that on the go. That's awesome. Wow. Okay, so I'll talk about a couple movies I saw. First off, something called Paris is Burning, which is a documentary that everyone in the world should see. I'm not going to get too deep into it just because It could have people have written like doctoral theses on this thing. So I'm going to read you the description. It's Paris is Burning. It's a 1990 American documentary filmed by a woman named Jenny Livingston. Filmed in the mid to late 1980s, it chronicles the ball culture of New York City and African-American, Latino, gay, and transgender communities involved in it. Critics consider the film to be an invaluable documentary of the end of the golden age of New York City drag balls and a thoughtful exploration of race, class, gender, and sexuality in America. Basically, if anyone listening is a fan of Madonna's Vogue era, this is where she got it from. Literally where she got it from.
Yeah.
She actually hired people who were in this documentary to like work with her as dancers and go on tour with her. I saw it. The reason I got it, by the way, is Criterion released it last month. It's my favorite documentary ever. It's heartbreaking. It's fascinating. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. It's just wonderful. Can't recommend it enough to anyone listening. And to follow that up, I'm smiling. You can't see me smiling when I'm smiling. I watched a movie called Killing American Style. I'll read you the description of that. After being arrested following a botched robbery, a criminal is on his way to prison with his gang when he is sprung by his brother. On the run and in need of medical help, the group takes over a family's home. This is directed by Amir Shervan, same guy who did Samurai Cop. So that kind of tells you the quality level, if you know what Samurai Cop is. I started to write notes on the movie, and then I realized I was writing a book. So I'm going to try to give this real concise. It stars Robert Zadar, who's the guy with the giant chin in Maniac Cop, and he's also in Samurai Cop.
Yeah.
Lots of mullets and jean jackets. The opening scene, a man auditions sexy dancers. He's wearing a jean jacket with the sleeves torn off and looks a bit like a guy you'd see when someone in their 50s talks about the AIDS crisis of the 80s. Cut to the same man is now making out and fondling one of the dancers. Their style of making out is snapping at each other's mouths with much in the same way an alligator would be taunted with a piece of raw chicken. Man is called away by Robert Zadar, telling the dancer to keep it warm, baby, to which she replies, I will. I audibly cringed. The guy auditioning dancers I named AIDS Guy. And AIDS Guy, it just called a black guy boy, so I guess we know where he stands. Then I wrote in all caps, Robert Zadar sex scene. I'd just like to point out that they're fucking on a twin bed like college students, and I couldn't stop laughing. This movie takes place in the era where men with mustaches wearing belly tees and jean jackets got all the pussy. 20 minutes in and roughly 30 cops have been killed. There's a black detective who's been introduced. Pretty sure he's the boxer from Mars Attacks. Robert Zadar has worn a shirt maybe 3 minutes total, and I was about an hour into the movie. There's a guy in the movie who's there only to fight the hero to prove, like, 'cause he's like the asshole dad, and he's going to fight the hero. He's 6'10", his blonde hair down to his lower back, and he has a Hitler mustache that's the color of dishwater. If you told me he time traveled from Coachella, I would believe you. There's a close-up of Robert Zadar screaming, "Speak up, bitch," and I really need that as an animated GIF to use on Destructoid. The good guy in this movie is wearing a lavender tracksuit, has permed hair, and a ponytail down to the small of his back. It was a simpler time. I highly recommend it. And then I have 3 little notes. This is the Banshee from Darby O'Gill and the Little People scared the shit out of me. And I just want to give a shout out to the Banshee from Darby O'Gill and the Little People. It was also James Bond's first role. He has a name, Sean Connery. It's his first movie role. He's handsome as fuck in that movie. Seriously. Darby O'Gill and the Little People. This is true. A group of Cenobites is called a gash.
What?
That's true. That's true. A group of Cenobites is called a gash.
Cinnabites, as in like little cinnamon rolls.
No.
Cenobites as in
like
Hellraiser.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, okay. I'm hearing that word wrong then.
No, it's okay. I'm a little congested today, so I'm not surprised.
I think I'm going down to a Cinnabon and getting a gash of Cinnabites.
Would you like a gash of Cinnabites?
I also like how those two things couldn't be more on the fucking opposite spectrums of each other. Oh, do you mean the small cinnamon rolls? Oh no, those people who torture you for all eternity that have got pins sticking out of their face.
Who would pick Cinnabites as dessert if they had another choice? So I think it's consistent that Cenobites would eat Cinnabites.
Cinnabites eating Cinnabites.
Because nobody in their right mind would pick something like that above something like ice cream. Except for evil people.
Every time I've seen people eat Cinnabites, they've all been morbidly obese, which tracks, but it's usually like, this is gonna be my breakfast, and it's you know, get like a Diet Coke.
Cinnabites are not breakfast; they're dessert, just like donuts. Donuts should not be a breakfast food. That's a dessert.
Yeah, and donuts are so twisted now anyway. They're like, we put Captain Crunch on this and some bacon, and we go ahead and put another donut that's also a hamburger. Like,
yeah.
Oh, God damn. All right, and the last one, I am renaming old people's buttholes suppositories depositories. All right, y'all should be carrying me on your shoulders for that.
I'm just thinking about all the time I've used preparation H, and I'm like, I'm not old.
Oh, you have an old soul.
Yeah, and an old asshole apparently. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up with me, and hopefully I think other people on the staff played this week. Was the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo that finally launched for PlayStation 4 just ahead of its release next month. I originally played part of this demo back at E3 this past last year, and I have to say, going from that to this, I really wish I would have played this full demo versus the only part of the demo that I got to play down at E3, because in this demo, it takes you on the first mission from Final Fantasy VII, which you get off on the train, you go through, and you fight the guard scorpion. I believe that's the robot's name, as you try and blow up the Mako reactor, and in the demo that I played at E3, you're basically put about a minute before you fight that giant robot. So you have this screen that tells you what the buttons do, and then you walk down the scaffolding and fight a couple of robots and a couple of soldiers, and then it's just this long 15-minute fight with the robot. And you only have 20 minutes to finish the demo at E3, so you had to get through as quickly as possible, and it ends as soon as you beat them. This is a lot longer, and for it makes for a better experience, because you're not just shown a screen of everything that you can do in this game. You get to run through it like a proper tutorial, because this is a much more involved action role-playing game than the original Final Fantasy, which is just turn-based menus. And so I walked away from E3 not really feeling the battle system. I liked how bombastic it was. I liked how showy and how it really went above and beyond what a lot of action role-playing games do to really be like an action game. But there's so many mechanics in it that just being thrown to the wolves didn't really prepare me for it, whereas this demo very much did. Occams, you played it. I want to get your thoughts on the battle system that they're implementing in this game.
I did classic mode, which is, I guess, sort of like they will kind of act on their own, but you still make the choices for using spells or abilities. I loved it. I really did. I'm talking about the idea of like, just here, fight two things, then fight the scorpion without having any sort of prep. That sounds like a nightmare, because that just had to be a clusterfuck. But no, I loved it. I was into the system. I kind of was able to kind of play around with the different characters. It's like, oh, okay, so you have the what's it called, Punisher mode versus just standard attacks. Then Bear can do his overdrive, and sort of using these abilities to build up their pressure meter thing. And once they're staggered or pressure, whatever it's called, you can do more damage, hitting them with lightning and all. I loved it. I had a really good time. It makes me really excited to think of, like, using different abilities for characters. Like, instead of someone is healer and someone is more defensive, and I don't know. I had a great time with it. I thought it was very smooth. It felt a little bit more like a fleshed out version of 15's combat, which I was appreciative of. I know some people mentioned they had issues with the camera. I didn't have a ton of issues with the camera. It can get a little intense at times. Like, I playing on classic mode, I didn't really have any problems fighting the scorpion boss. But I could certainly see how on more difficult settings, when you're really, time is of the essence and different things. If your character's low on health, you can kind of jump around. But I think it's one of those things you just sort of have to find your rhythm and almost like stay calm, for lack of a better term. It just sort of like, okay, characters will do this. But no, I loved it. 100% loved it.
As someone who hasn't played the demo yet, but I'm very curious about it, but has played Final Fantasy 15, I'm a little bit like leery. Is it like vastly different from 15, or is it like straight up just kind of expanding on 15? Is if it's still kind of the hold down button to just attack kind of stuff? Because I feel like there's a ton of people that were worried about that. So, any takes on that, or?
I think they used 15's combat as a foundation. I think they took the idea of it, but
Alright.
they trimmed some of the fat. They made it a little bit more intuitive, and it's a little bit more direct instead of that kind of just flipping around doing stuff. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, certainly, but it's not. It's not just a copy and paste for 15 and 7.
Yeah, I didn't mind 15, but I remember distinctly there was probably more of a minority, but there was definitely a certain user base that were not crazy about that combat. So a little bit curious about that.
I've seen people commenting that they're upset it's not just Final Fantasy VII's turn-based system again.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I mean,
which,
I
don't think people would ever back that in a modern sense, anyways.
yeah, I think that's nostalgia talking. Like that was a fine system at the time, but that's really, really slow. And for some people, they want that. I get that, but like, man, this combat, the way it's so you see the enemies, you walk up, even transitions from the cutscenes into the actual playing the game, it's all seamless.
Mhm.
I love that experience now versus like just like you would hit an enemy, like the screen would go rah, rah, you know, all of a sudden you're fighting, which was again fine back in the day, but that was, you know, what, 20 years ago, 23, whatever. I can't do math.
And if you want that experience, just start supporting the Dragon Quest franchise because it sticks with that old school turn-based combat. Just throwing that out there so more people will play Dragon Quest.
Yeah, those games, I didn't grow up playing Dragon Quest, but man, I played the newest one. That's just a fun fucking like old school, like, oh yeah, this is an RPG I grew up with, but in kind of a modern time, and it's really pretty and fun.
Yeah, it's a nice throwback.
Yeah.
And speaking of pretty, the demo looks amazing running on my PlayStation 4 Slim. I was wondering if it was going to, if it was going to be something that really needed to be played on a PS Pro or PlayStation 4 Pro. But no, it looks and runs just magically on my Slim. It's a like 7 gigabyte demo. It's huge. It's bigger than all of Dreams. I'm not really in love with the dialogue of some of the characters. Some of it is a little ham-fisted. But
Right.
and I can see a lot of people talking about the battle system being messy. I can see that. I just think that it will get a lot less cluttered as we really figure it out. So
I think probably the other big concern is the naming of this, because I have spoken with a few people now who have pre-ordered this, and they started talking about it. I was like, yeah, you realize it's just Midgar, right? And the moment I started explaining that to them, their eyes light up. Like, I do question how many people realize that this is just part one of God knows how many. And they really haven't gone completely out of their way to express as much. They have flat out titled this thing Final Fantasy VII Remake. They don't put a subtitle saying Episode 1 or Midgar. It's just
Wow.
Final Fantasy VII Remake. And a little bit worried about kind of the post effect of that when people get past the ending, I guess.
I can't really fault them if people don't like read about the game. Like that's it's not like there's nothing out there saying that. There's tons of information about this game that states explicitly it's just Midgar. So if those people didn't know that, maybe they should.
That's what I thought
more.
as well, but I've spoken with now at least 3 people that have thought this was a remake of the full game.
I've seen so much kind of feedback from the demo that's just been hugely positive. Like I've seen very little negative. There is negative feedback out there, but I've seen so much positive feedback about demo. And interestingly enough, some people who, especially on Destructoid, some people in the community who were really taken by it are people who haven't played Final Fantasy VII before. And I think for the people who are going in with no burden of expectation, they're possibly the people who are going to have the best time. Because
Absolutely.
they've not got that kind of shadow hanging over them. Do you know what I mean? And I think those people are the people who are kind of in for the biggest treat. And that's not at all to imply that I'm assuming that if you've played the original, you won't like this, because, like I say, people seem really big on it. But if you're going into this as a brand new game, having not played the original, I think like you've got the freest, most open-minded way of approaching the story and the characters and the action. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yes.
And of course, the most important thing is when you get to the end of like the Midgar section, that motorbike sequence better be fucking terrible because like they need to keep that tradition up. Like, if I get to that motorbike bit and it's really good, I'm going to be so fucking disappointed.
I just want it to be all you can do is like slash left, slash right, and it looks like yours like an action figure arm is just
just wheeling around. Yeah, but I think it looks great. Like I think I love the visuals. I love seeing those characters that I cared about so much in the 90s, and I'd love seeing kind of redesigned with modern technology. Aerith looks fucking amazing. So does Tifa, and the textures on the clothes are like really cool as well. And I think that's great. Straight up, I don't think I'm going to play the remake. I really like Final Fantasy VII. I have incredible memories of when that game came out that are tied into where I was in my real life at the time and all that. But I think I'm good to, I did everything for it, and I did the gold, I raised the gold chocobo and got Knights of the Round and all that. And I think I'm quite happy to have kind of closed that book. But this is I think this is going to be like really good for people who came along a little later, who didn't get to experience that game. I'm just hoping, touching upon what Dan said a little earlier, I really hope that as we move on, Square are going to be a bit more transparent of their plans for this and how many parts they're going to be and when they're coming out. And if everything becomes you only know halfway through the year whether it's coming out at the end of the year thing, I think that's really going to break the momentum, much like Telltale games did towards the end. I think it's really going to break the momentum of people's enjoyment of the story and of the game.
Yeah, and I'm curious about the new content as well. Because I replayed Final Fantasy VII last year, and Midgar is if you speed through it, 3 hours. 5 hours if you explore and try and do everything. So they're promising this to be a full-length game, and I keep wrapping my brain around how do you expand Midgar to be an air quote full-length game? So I'm both excited and a tiny bit cautious about that. So
to what you said, Chris, about people who are just coming into Final Fantasy for the first time are going to have the chance of enjoying it more than probably people who have some sort of attachment to the original. I think you are correct, because there is a moment in the demo that retcons some of the story. So not only will they be adding more story, obviously, to this opening section to make it longer than 3 hours, but it looks like they're going to be changing elements of the story as well. And so it'll be interesting to see how those changes sit with the fanatical fan base that has been there since 1997, loving this game and just waiting for this remake.
Well, here's the thing of remaking of all things Final Fantasy VII, and what I'm about to say is the creakiest, oldest comment in the world. So I'm not dropping any fucking any big revelation on anyone here, but kind of touching upon what Dan and Occams were saying earlier, there are people who are like, oh, they've changed the battle system, and there are some people who were like, oh, well, why can't we have it exactly the same? And ever since Final Fantasy VII Remake was rumored, when people were just wish listing a Final Fantasy VII Remake, there was always that question of, you're going to piss off somebody. You're gonna annoy people who want it to be exactly the same but with new graphics, and you're going to annoy people who are like, oh, you've kept all these archaic mechanics in there. And I trust that the game will come to a smart compromise between the two. So this isn't a knock on the game, but they've really kind of, when I think there's already this issue that has always been around the idea of remaking Final Fantasy VII today, which is it's a few decades old and we have to update it, but at the same time we want to bring in new fans who've not experienced it and give them their best experience, but we also don't want to upset people who are like, but this is my favorite game and I how dare you touch it. But I do think the positive reception this demo's got, the mostly positive reception, is at least a good sign that out of the gate people seem to be happy with the compromise so far.
Yeah, I think the best way to look at it would be just look at it as a fresh start, a fresh start at the story, essentially.
I think so too, personally. But
and something I try to keep in mind, people who kind of cling to their memories of the original one, those don't go away magically. It's the same kind with Star Wars.
And films,
those experiences you had, those movies, those games, or whatever, they're still there for you to love and enjoy. And just because something is different or new, it doesn't erase or replace or diminish anything you've experienced with those. So it's okay. You know, it's fine, and we'll have a good time. Video games, they're great.
The first person who says this game ruined my childhood, I'm banning from the site. Just throwing that down now.
Are you going to ban me for saying that I'll only play this game if it's retconned entirely to be another successor to Final Fantasy XIII?
This is Podtoid.
All right, that is it for games, which means it is time for the news.
This is the news.
And it's another quiet week because honestly, I think the specter of the coronavirus has yet to fully be seen on how much it's going to affect the industry going forward. But there was a little bit of news out of last week, and that is that The Last of Us is getting a television series on HBO. The series, which is in the early stages of production, has Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin on board, along with The Last of Us writer Neil Druckmann. That's pretty significant because it's actually kind of rare to get the writer for a game on board for an adaptation. Maybe that's why the Uncharted movie has been stuck in development hell for like 9 years. That movie was also in the news this week because they added Antonio Banderas to the cast. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the series will cover the events of the first game, though it does not make mention of the celebrated Left Behind DLC, if that will also be a part of the series. What is our interest in a Last of Us television series?
I watch so little, apart from Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged Series, I watch so little TV that it's like, I'm kind of just meh about the whole thing. I think it would translate into a very good TV show, but whether I actually want to watch it is another matter entirely. So
yeah, the thing that's tricky with a Last of Us and Uncharted, like an Uncharted movie and a Last of Us TV show, you're already taking games that are extremely cinematic in their presentation, how they play, and then you're just translating it into something that's just straight up cinematic. And the other thing is, if I want to watch The Last of Us, but as a TV show or a movie, there's a thing called The Road. It's really good. It's an excellent movie. And if you watch that, you're set.
Just a word of warning, though, you can only watch The Road once. It is, if you were even slightly depressed and you watch The Road, you will kill yourself.
Damn.
That's the Cormac McCarthy one, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Saw that in the theater. Fucking rough movie, man. Rough movie. It's a good movie. Real good. Rough movie.
But yeah, I loved the movie, and I loved The Last of Us. And it just feels like going from The Road to playing The Last of Us to now maybe watching HBO The Last of Us is just maybe a little too much for me. I don't know. My interest is pretty low on it.
I will say someone in the comment section made the mention that they should hire the girl from Unbelievable as Ellie. That actor's name is Caitlin Dever, and she's an excellent choice. If you don't know who she is, she was the lesbian best friend in Booksmart, and she's also the youngest daughter on Last Man Standing. She also played Cassie Drake in Uncharted 4, so Neil Druckmann at least knows who she is. It could happen.
I'm into it, and I'll tell you, one, I'm a huge Last of Us fan, so I'm always up for more Last of Us stuff. You got the Chernobyl guy, and I haven't seen Chernobyl. Heard good things, and I'm interested in watching it. And I'm a little disappointed. It's just a retelling of the game. That I don't need that. Like, that story's been told, but I do think there are a lot of interesting stories to tell in that world, and I would like to see that more. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot, certainly.
Yeah, like my dream idea of a Last of Us TV show would be just a series of short stories, maybe like 30 minutes to an hour long each, set within that world. Just there is so much potential to explore within that world in that context of a HBO style show, I think, personally.
I think with the Joel and Ellie story, I mean it was done so well in the game that just retelling it like you said earlier, CJ, you're just kind of gonna be comparing like beat for beat, all these different plot points and things, and it just kind of I don't see the dramatic impact there. It's not like that game isn't well known, so it's not like I guess you'll get people who never played the game watching it, but it feels weird to me not to expand that universe more. You could pick any moment in that game and create a story, peripheral to it.
My one demand for this series is that they hire Billy Eichner as Bill, just because I want all of Bill's lines delivered with Billy Eichner's scream acting.
Just him running down the road. You stole my magazines.
Have you seen the draft? Like that.
Oh, thank you for that. I needed that laugh today.
This is Podtoid.
All right, it is time for the main topic of our show. This week, the PlayStation 2 celebrated its 20th anniversary. The best-selling console of all time, originally launched in Japan on March 4th in the year 2000. It wouldn't reach the West until October of that year, back when video game launches were big enough news stories to lead the local news.
This is NBC 17 First News at 4 p.m.
Good afternoon, I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Heidi Deja. There are waiting lists and tickets just to stand in line and get a chance to buy PlayStation 2. That is PlayStation 2, the hottest game to hit the market, and it arrives in the U.S. tomorrow. But some people are standing in line already trying to buy this toy.
First of all, there's nothing gamers like more than their console being referred to as a toy. That is...
And a game as well.
And a game.
It makes me think of, did you ever in the US have a period at KFC where they did these kids' toys, which were these little, they were Sonic based, but they were like these little toys that were full of water, and you had to shoot like the little flippers to get hoops to go through pegs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that it makes me think like how a games consoles being a toy is like one of those.
You can still buy those here at like in seaside towns. Like they'll have a shell game that's water, and they look like PSPs, but it's it's a ring game with water. So
Oh, I love those.
To be fair to that reporter, as someone who has gone back and read a ton of gaming magazines, like Games Media got its start in toy magazines, straight up.
Yeah, I mean, video games are in the Toy Hall of Fame, so, it makes sense. But, by the way, this was actually my favorite line from that news story.
And in the fall of 2001, Nintendo will be releasing their GameCube. So everybody's going to be rushing to the stores for that one.
Yeah, no, Larry, they're not going to be rushing to buy that. Having bought a GameCube myself, there was very few people in line. Certainly not like the PlayStation 2 launch, which I've been watching videos of this week, and it was insane. Especially in Japan, when it launched, of just how many people were out there.
I mean, it was a cost-effective DVD player as well. That's what did it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know I have friends whose parents were sold on that thing because it was a DVD player.
I worked in a video game store at the time the PlayStation 2 came out. And it's really funny because I don't remember the actual launch of the UK launch of the console. And I was there for it. I remember having boxes, and we had to write names because obviously it was like pre-ordered. There was a pre-order backlog. We had to write names on the thing, and people would come in and ask for it, and then they'd be like, "Can we put our name down?" And we were just like, "No." They were like, "Can we put a name down for the next time they come in?" We were just like, "No, just come in, and if we've got them, we'll sell them to you," because there was no point in having like a waiting list. But I do remember the very first one we ever got in, which was a Japanese one, and I remember it coming in and us opening it, and as we're taking it out of the shipping box behind the counter, someone over the counter just went, "I'll have that." And he didn't even ask how much it was. He was like, "I'll have that." And I can't remember what we sold it to, but it was definitely not. It was definitely north of 500. It was like 750 or something. And he was just like, "I'll have that." And we hadn't even like finished unboxing it, and he went and he just bought it on his card. He bought that with like, I can't, memories hazy, we're talking 25 years and a lot of cocaine ago.
Yeah.
But like it was like he bought that, and I think it was with Fantavision and the football game that came out at the time, because obviously these are Japanese games, and maybe Project Gotham, or that could have been a week or so later. But I just remember that guy buying it before we'd even finished unpacking the first one we had in. We were like, "We're going to have it behind the counter and it's going to look so great." And it didn't even get onto a shelf. Like the guy just walked out the store with it within an hour. Like,
The dude didn't buy an NTSC-J console and not realize, because that would be so annoying to get home and be like, "Oh, God damn it, none of the games work."
No, wildly, he was like one of the only customers we had who bought import stuff, and he just happened to be in the shop when it arrived.
I remember Dreamcast, or Sega, I should say specifically, ran like a series of ads, and I think like the Sega magazine here in North America that were like straight up like, our deepest condolences to Sony on their PS2 shipping difficulties, with like some ginger kid sticking his fucking tongue out and stuff. Oh man.
And they had the last laugh.
Yes.
They did.
I don't really have a lot of memories of the PlayStation 2. We got it in our house during what I will always refer to as the best Christmas ever. My brother got the PlayStation 2, I got a Dreamcast, and we both got our own television. So, like, no more sharing. We can just be in our rooms all day playing these games. And then, of course, a few months later, the Dreamcast was discontinued. And I stupidly traded it in. But my brother took his PlayStation 2 off to Bible school, so I just went without a PlayStation 2 for the longest time. I eventually got the GameCube and just settled into my Nintendo ways from there. But my best memory was that I was in college and I was in between housing at the moment, so I was staying with some people, and they had a PlayStation 2, and they just went out and rented God of War and Gran Turismo 4, and I just soaked up God of War. I was just enthralled by that game. Beat it in 2 days, and it was just like, oh, I cannot believe I missed out on this fucking thing by not having a PlayStation this whole time. So, yeah, that's probably my best memory of it. And then, yeah,
that Hydra fight, man, in the beginning.
Yeah.
That sold so many fucking copies of God of War. God damn, that was it's still to this day just an amazing battle, amazing fight. What is Bible school?
So it's not quite college. It's more like it was a religious internship, I guess. We both went on mission trips when we were younger, although I was much younger than he was, and he decided to stick it out with the organization, and so they do this like 2-year religious education course, like training people to be youth pastors, I guess, but there's no like actual degree. It's just you spend money and go live in Texas for 2 years, and he's not a youth pastor or anything, or a pastor, but he met his wife there. But that's it. Honestly, it was the best he could do. He was not a good student.
Yeah, fair enough.
Aside from the work-related stuff, I love the PS2. I think it was a great console. I really liked the design of the slim one as well. I played it. It was at that time. I talk a lot on this show sometimes about how I feel kind of old and tired all the time, but it came out at the peak period where I could just stay up all night and then sleep for an hour and then do a full day's work the next day and just not give a shit, like it was nothing. So I lost nights and nights and nights and nights for years to just so many PS2 games. And working in the shop, I could just fucking take home whatever I wanted, just as and when. So I had access to just the library of everything. And playing games with friends, playing like SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, which I still think is the best game in that like SmackDown /2K series of wrestling titles. And as I wrote on the article on the site, like Vice City, which I lost so much time to endlessly playing that game. And that's just like 2 titles, but they had loads of fighters on there. There was those kind of creaky but fun 3D Mortal Kombats. There was when Metal Gear 2 came out, and that weird happening where everyone played Metal Gear 2 and then found out that you were only Snake for like the first hour of the game, which was just like it was just such a moment. That was when everyone was like, I'm playing Metal Gear 2 and I've been Snake, and now he just seems to have gone from the game. And it was just such a, like, everyone was just waiting for him to come back. You know what I mean?
It cleverly changed Raiden's model as well in the trailers to like Snake's model.
Oh,
really? So like nobody expected this guy to come. It was great.
I remember when they first showed the trailer. I can't remember what show it was, but I remember when they first showed the trailer for Metal Gear 2, there were reports coming out of people crying when they were watching it because they couldn't believe that video games had come to this level. Like, that stuff's cheesy, but I dig it. Like, now it's just pure cynicism at every trailer. Rightfully so, because we've been conned too many times. Yeah. But I dig the idea of people going to trade shows and crying at trailers. But Yeah, I've got loads of great memories of the PS2. I had an American one as well because I wanted to play a whole bunch of games like earlier and in 60 frames a second and all that. I remember I imported an American copy of Twisted Metal Black because the UK copy was censored and they took out all of the cutscenes and some of the stages. So I like imported that in from overseas. And this is just me fucking wanking off over my own fucking memories now. But the fact is during that time, I'd recently kind of left school or college even, and I was working and I had my own money for the first time. And it was around the time that I was like training and being a retinist, and I moved out from home. So there's so much tied up in that console's lifespan. And I think that's really important to whenever people talk about their favorite games and their favorite consoles, I always think it goes beyond just, I really like the game. And I think a lot of it comes in from the outside influences that were going on in your life at the time.
Looking back on like the GameCube and Xbox, like there are plenty of those console only games which were fantastic. I mean, I'm not making my point well here because I'm blanking, but the reason I'm blanking is because I didn't own those consoles. So, but Paper Mario and Thousand Year Door, for example. My friends had GameCubes. They'd be able to tell you all of their smash hits. Super Mario Sunshine. I know a lot of people didn't like that game, but actually, I've seen a lot of it because of my involvement in speedrunning now, and it looks like a really, really good game. Like, I don't know why people shit on it so much. But yeah, with the PS2, for me, I was too young to really properly enjoy it at the time. I mean, I got it late, which was part of the problem, because back then my parents used to always make me wait a little while just to see if I really, really wanted it, and then I'd get it, and some of the hype would have gone by the time I got it. But yeah, I was very much, I played age-appropriate games. And occasionally I saw like the brothers of my friends would be playing something like San Andreas, and that's how I saw the full breadth of the catalog a little bit more. But I played mainly SSX 3 and Tricky, and some of the Tony Hawk games, but they're like bawdy humor and they're not like people smashing each other's face in or anything. So that was sort of okay. And just really crappy stuff as well, like The Sims for PS2, which was actually, it had like a storyline, and I enjoyed it. There was a lot of crap games that you can get fun, dumb enjoyment out on the PS2. But now that I'm a bit older, it's like the PS2 is like a must-own if you collect games, because there's just so much back catalogue stuff that you should have. It's probably becoming a bit weaker now because a lot of it's being remastered for the PS4. And to be honest, if you're into collecting trophies, then you should get the remasters. It doesn't make sense to get the old versions if you're not going to get both. But yeah, it's like, I mean, when I encounter people who've not played any PS2, it's like I've got so many different things I can tell them about, like Devil May Cry series, a lot of some Resident Evil entries. There's just so much in there that it's like when I started collecting PlayStation games, my biggest collection is for the PS2, and I haven't played like 3/4 of it because I just don't have the time, but most of it's really, really good. Like commercially, like reviewed, really, really good. I mean, I obviously haven't played them, so I can't say, but stuff like your Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, that sort of stuff. It's just endless games that really I need more time off work to play.
You are listening to Podtoid.
We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, we have a community shout out this week.
We do. It's the blonde bass's birthday. So congratulations on another birthday. Achievement unlocked. Yes. So happy birthday to blonde bass.
I'll tell you something as well. When this goes out, which is Monday, I believe it's Necro's birthday as well.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I just wanted to say, give a quick shout out to the Quickcade people. This is a speedrun marathon that's taking place in London this weekend. They had some really bad problems with their getting a venue, like their venue cancelled the day before because of the coronavirus outbreak. And with the help of the venue, so they originally going to do it at Red Bull headquarters, like one of their offices, and Red Bull has helped them find somewhere else. But I can't imagine how stressful it must be to know people are coming from continental Europe flying over, and while they are flying, the venue has been cancelled. So a real big congratulations and thank you for the venue, for the organisers for being so hardworking and not panicking, like not completely flipping out when that happened. And they're raising money for a spinal cord injury charity. And the last time I looked, I think they're about £1,800. So they're doing pretty well. So yeah, really cool work, guys.
Nice. Very nice. And if you're going to that, don't forget to wash your hands.
Yes.
That
I think
is-
they probably have hand sanitizer everywhere.
And also, if you're just doing things, wash your hands, because like it's hygienic and we should just be doing it generally.
And buy hand lotion, because the skin on your hands will crack if you're washing your hands every 5 minutes.
And for fuck's sake, just cough into like the crook of your arm and not into your hands, just out in the open.
Turn it into a dab. You look stylish while you're doing it.
All right, on that note, this is it for this episode of Podtoid. On behalf of Dan, Chris, Occams, Charlotte, and myself, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or the Destructoid YouTube channel.